So let's talk about local and global variables. So I think the names themselves give us some intuition here, right? So local variables are variables which are defined inside of the function body. Up top, middle, bottom, it doesn't matter where we define them. The main feature that they have is that they're only accessible within the function. They only exist within the function, and anywhere within the function, let's say we create A within the function, we can use A anywhere within. If you want to use A outside of that function, you'll get an error because A doesn't exist. So this phenomena is called that the variable A that I gave for an example, it has local scope. So let's look about global variables. They're defined outside of a function body there, so they're defined on the main, the leftmost indent of the program. Typically they're defined towards the top of the program, but they can be defined pretty much anywhere. So they're accessible anywhere in that file, right? So if A was created in the first line indented maximum to the left, you could access A from a function, from the bottom of the program, from anywhere else. And they're said to have global scope. So local scope is variables that exist only within the function where they're created. Global scope is variables that exist pretty much everywhere within a program. So let's have a look in code and experience this practically. So here we go. We have some rainfall values, and we're going to write functions that process rainfall. So first up, I just want to write a simple one that kind of prints out rainfall in a sort of neat way. And this function is it's going to return nothing since we're printing stuff, but it's going to take in the rainfall value. So let's create something like that. Print rainfall. Again, descriptive function name. If your names are good enough, you really don't need docstrings. As I said, but docstrings are best practice, and that depends how much code you're creating. But I'm going to go ahead and skip it for these ones because the names are self-evident. So we're going to print rainfall. We're going to take in, an iterable. I'm just going to call it values. That'll do. So let's say that in our printing, we are going to actually count days. So this is going to be day 1, day 2, day 3. So I'm going to set a local variable, day equals to 1. And then I'm going to iterate through that list. For value in values, we're going to print. So we can say something like this. Day, comma, variable day, comma, that. And then we can iterate plus equal. So let's have a look. Print rainfall. So rainfall, thinking I maybe should have named that something else, but not this little. So there you go. That's our first little function. So don't worry, I'm setting you up for global and local scope. So let's actually look at some local scope. Let's do a function that returns an average of rainfall, right? So obviously that's going to be called def average rainfall. And it's going to take in values like the last one. Now, we need some mechanism of summing up all of those. There's just a normal native sum function, but to keep things interesting, I'm actually going to import math. And I'm going to return, so I'm going to return the average by using math.fsum. Now, fsum stands for floating point sum. So math.fsum of values. So we're going to add them all up and divide them by the length values. So this should work marvelously. So we're going to print average rainfall of the rainfall values, whatever they are. So I'm going to run this. 63, yeah. That looks about right. That works. Got a couple zeros there, a couple of big values. 63 makes sense. Sorry, 60 makes sense. But let's have a play. Let's print just that. Fine. That's because values is that parameter, maybe doesn't exist. Why don't we print the sum of rainfall? Even that doesn't work because math is not defined. So this is an example of local scope. The import math, the math module, it's only going to work within this function where it was imported. So pretty much any variable you create, even any library you import, anything that you sort of create in this function or import is only going to exist within the average rainfall function. And that is a perfect example of local scope. Now, let's do something that's going to bring up global scope. So we have a variable here. It's a global variable. In fact, both of these are global. They're declared leftmost indentation right up top of the program. And I'm just going to write a function that changes location. And we're going to run into a bit of trouble with global and local scope. So let's check this out. So we're going to write a function called change location. And it's going to take a parameter. The parameter is going to be new location. And in here, I'm going to say location equals new location. So that really should work, right? Print, we might even just declare it now. The new location is location. So let's just print location. So location is Melbourne. We can now change location and make that something else, New York. All right, let's run this. Okay, Melbourne, new location is New York. So this, when we print location again, now that should be New York, shouldn't it? But no, it's still Melbourne. And that's the tip. Shadows name location from outer scope. See, this location and that location are not the same. This location is a local variable. It only exists here. If we want to change that one, then right at the start of the function, we're going to have to declare global location. Now that tells the function that the location that we're dealing with isn't some new variable that we introduced. It is that one right there. And if we run this, now the change location function works because you're working with a global location variable, which has been set to the new location, which is now New York. So just to reiterate, examples of local scope was that this math library only exists within the average rainfall function. We can't call the math library anywhere else. If we created a variable here, and if we created a variable called monkeys equals to 20 or 12 monkeys, that was a show, we actually cannot print that variable outside either. It's going to cause an error. Monkeys is not defined. The same is true for libraries that you do. So anything that's created or imported inside functions only exists within those functions. Variables that are global, if they're assigned or reassigned or recreated inside a function, you're going to run into trouble unless in the function you declare that you're working with some global variables. So if that function is going to affect any global variables, you actually have to write in global right in there in that function. Awesome. So that's a wrap for this video.